Welcome to Breaking Down the Future of Income. It's great to be back, and I'm particularly excited about our topic today. It's something we've all been kicking around for a while now, haven't we?
Yeah, always. And, I'm still not convinced. But yeah, welcome back, listeners.
Absolutely. Always a pleasure. And it's a really important conversation to have, no matter where you stand on the issue. So, welcome to all our listeners.
So, shall we dive straight in? Today's topic, as you might have guessed, is Universal Basic Income, or UBI. I've been doing a lot more research, particularly looking at some of the more recent trials, and my conviction that this is a crucial step for the future is only getting stronger.
Okay, here we go. My favorite, UBI, the thing that promises free money for everyone, right? But where does that money magically appear from? I'm always confused about that. Like, is it just printed out of thin air?
That's a valid question, and it's one we need to tackle head on. It's definitely not magic. It's about reallocation, restructuring, and potentially, yes, some level of new taxation. But let's not let that immediately derail us. I'm interested in the data and the specific mechanisms more than the fear of free money that seems to come with the conversation.
Exactly. And we shouldn't let the sort of gut reaction to the idea obscure the actual societal benefit, right? I mean, thinking about it purely from an economic viewpoint, even just a basic UBI could be a huge stimulant. It would put money directly into the hands of people who are most likely to spend it, increasing overall demand and driving the economy forward.
Yeah, but wouldn't that also cause massive inflation? If everyone suddenly has more money, prices would go up, right? Then the UBI itself is kind of worthless. It's like chasing your own tail, isn't it?
That's the core concern, the inflation question. It's something that all these pilot programs have to closely monitor. Yes, it's a possibility, and it's certainly a valid concern. But if it's implemented properly, with the right fiscal policies in place, it can be managed. We're not talking about just handing out unlimited amounts of cash. It would have to be calibrated to maintain stability.
And it wouldn't be unlimited, right? We're talking about a base level, enough to meet basic needs, providing a financial safety net. Think of it like this: it empowers people to take risks, to start businesses, to retrain for new jobs. It's not just a handout, it's an investment in human potential. We're stuck in this narrative of people sitting around doing nothing, but all the research says differently. People want to be productive and contribute, but often they are trapped in a cycle of low pay and precarious work.
Okay, I see the investment angle. But what about the people who might just use it to, buy things that aren't so good for society? I mean, I'm not judging, but there are some that would use it for that, right?
Exactly. It's about empowering people to make better choices. When you're not constantly worried about where your next meal is coming from, you're more likely to invest in education, in your health, in your community. And thinking about that, some of the trials in Canada, in particular, have shown people are actually working more hours after receiving a UBI, even though they don't have to.
Wait a second. So you're saying that giving people free money actually makes them work more? That doesn't even make any sense. I mean, if I had a basic amount of money coming in every month, I know I'd probably just kick back a little bit or a lot.
The work disincentive is a big worry, but the research and the trials are consistently showing that it's not as simple as free money equals less work. It seems like UBI provides people with the security they need to take on more fulfilling work, even if it's something less traditional or part-time. They are not trapped in jobs they hate. They can find better fits, or even create their own employment.
Yes. And it's worth noting that often those who choose to work less often shift their focus to things that also benefit society. Volunteer work, caring for their families, pursuing further education, becoming involved in local projects. These are all things that contribute to a stronger society, even if they aren't traditional forms of employment. And they're not really free anyway, because we are still working, just differently.
Okay, so say this works. We have a bunch of people suddenly out there creating their own jobs, volunteering, whatever. How do you pay for it? Where's the actual money going to come from? We haven't actually answered this. You mentioned it earlier, but I'm still unsure.
Right? This is a very valid question. It's not just about printing more money. It would require a multi-pronged approach. Part of it could be streamlining the existing welfare system. All of those costs and bureaucracy could be folded into the UBI structure. We also have to think about reforming the tax system, possibly closing some loopholes, and yes, potentially increasing taxes on high earners or corporations. A wealth tax is often a suggestion I have heard.
Yes, and we have to look at the long-term picture too. When people have a basic level of income, they're less likely to need expensive social services, which helps reduce overall government spending. Health outcomes will improve. which will further cut costs. It is an investment, and over time, it's something that could be very self-sustaining if managed well.
Okay, I see some potential benefits. But streamlining the welfare system, that's been said a million times. No government is able to streamline anything. It always ends up more complicated, not less. And I feel like increasing taxes is the phrase that always comes up. No one likes taxes. And what about the potential for fraud? If there's just a payment going to everyone, surely that's just more opportunity for people to game the system.
Those are very valid points and something we need to be realistic about. Yes, governmental systems are often very messy, but that's no reason not to strive for something better. And with UBI, because it is unconditional, it would actually remove some of the avenues of fraud that exist with the current system, where eligibility criteria are incredibly difficult to verify. It also eliminates the need for some of the incredibly complex paperwork and means testing of current welfare systems, which are costly in and of themselves.
And the thing is, this is about moving beyond the idea that people on welfare are scammers or lazy. The system is broken, and we need to address that. That's the whole point here. UBI is an investment, and there will be ways to make it more efficient and less prone to fraud. But we can't let a few potential issues prevent us from considering a system that addresses the root of a lot of our societal problems.
I suppose. I still feel like there's so much to figure out. Like, what about the people who are already struggling? How do we make sure they don't just get left behind in the transition to UBI? Or those in very remote areas with higher cost of living and so on? Wouldn't a flat rate UBI just exacerbate inequality for them?
Those are all critical considerations, and a successful UBI program will require a lot of careful policy design. Transition is a big hurdle, and there needs to be a phased implementation with support mechanisms for those most vulnerable. There's a lot of literature on targeted support and top-ups for specific communities or those who need it. And when you mention people in remote areas, yes, cost of living needs to be factored in, potentially with regional differences to payments to ensure a basic standard of living everywhere. UBI isn't one size fits all. It's a template that requires adaptation for context.
Absolutely. And this isn't about implementing UBI tomorrow. It's about a discussion we need to have now, and we need to keep having it to gradually and thoughtfully transition to something that actually works for our future. We're living in a very different economic landscape from the one we had 50 years ago, or even 10 years ago. Automation and AI are going to change the way we work, and UBI is a way to prepare for that.
Automation is another worry of mine. If robots are taking all our jobs, I mean, even with a UBI, what happens to human purpose, you know? If no one is working, what do we do with ourselves? I find that a bit depressing, actually.
That's an important and also existential question. It is a shift in our understanding of work and purpose. For many people, their identity is so closely tied to their jobs, and that's something that will need to be addressed with wider societal changes. This goes beyond UBI, of course. It's a question we should be addressing anyway, even without considering UBI with the advancement of automation.
Yeah, and we need to really challenge this idea that work is the only thing that gives us purpose. I mean, UBI would actually liberate people from the drudgery of work and allow them to explore their own passions, whether it's the arts, or sports, or writing, or just time with their family or community. The idea that work is only tied to an income stream needs to be shifted. It can be about contributing, about value, about creating and connecting, not always a paid transaction.
Okay, I kind of see your point. I still think that the idea of UBI is a bit too idealistic. I'm struggling to see it in the real world, and I still feel like it is a giant experiment that might just crash and burn. And we haven't even talked about the politics of it. I just feel like getting the right politicians to agree on a UBI is like trying to herd cats.
That's true. The political hurdles are enormous. There would be a lot of resistance, and it would require enormous political will and public support. But that's what we should be discussing. How we make sure that we have the policies that can enable better systems and structures for all of us. What are the political changes that we need to make sure we have a functioning society where more of us can thrive? It's also true that some politicians are hesitant to embrace new ideas that challenge the status quo, and that's a battle we should be fighting. We can't be paralyzed by the obstacles. We have to start having these difficult conversations.
Exactly. And the status quo isn't working, right? We're seeing increasing inequality, more and more people struggling with precarious work, and at the same time, resources are being concentrated in fewer and fewer hands. It is unsustainable, and it's creating a society that just isn't working for a huge segment of the population. We should see UBI as a part of that solution. It isn't the whole solution, but it's a large step in the right direction.
So you're saying we should try to do it even with all the risk of failure and potentially screwing things up even more. I feel like it's a big gamble, a really big gamble. What if it just makes things worse?
That's a fair fear, but I also think we can't allow the fear of failure to prevent us from even trying to improve things. There are plenty of potential downsides, but I'm more concerned about the status quo leading us down a very dangerous path. We have to approach it cautiously with continuous evaluation and adjustment. And yes, there are risks, but the risks of inaction are also substantial.
Yes, and the key word here is experimentation. No system is going to work perfectly right away. That's how societal change has always happened. We're constantly learning, constantly adjusting. What we do know is that there's a lot of data from these pilot programs that are showing a lot of positive effects. We also know that the current system is not addressing the problems of economic inequality and precarity. We have to acknowledge that we can do better and explore potential solutions.
I guess so, but I still have so many questions. I feel like I've been looking at this idea from a position of just saying no, but I guess I need to think about it a bit more and also do my own research. Maybe there is something more to it than I thought.
That's the spirit, right? It's about open discussion, critical evaluation, and working together to find solutions that benefit us all. And this is a big, complex topic, and that's exactly why we should be talking about it more. We all need to engage with the facts and the research and be open to solutions that are different from what we've always known.
Exactly. And I think it's important for us to keep coming back to this conversation in the future. I also encourage our listeners to do their own research, to engage with UBI research, and to form their own informed opinions. Because it's not about accepting blindly, it's about understanding. I feel there is an amazing opportunity for us to create a much more just society if we embrace new ideas.
I appreciate that. I'm going to have to go away and chew on everything we've talked about. This definitely gives me something to think about. I'm definitely still a bit on the fence, but maybe there is something more to this. It's not as straightforward as I first thought.
Absolutely. That's the whole idea, isn't it? To have these discussions, to challenge our own assumptions, and to be open to new ideas. I feel we've covered a lot today, and we've explored some really important issues. I hope it helps everyone who is listening to think about these issues a bit differently.
Well, that's about all the time we have for today. Thank you both for your invaluable insights and for keeping me on my toes with your skepticism. And a big thank you to our listeners for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks everyone. It's been interesting. Still not fully sold, but I'll be back with more questions next time.
Thanks, everyone. It's always a great discussion with you both. We will be back again soon, so keep listening.